The first chapter that we will explore describes the different discrepancies that can be found whilst comparing evolutionary theory to economic theories. According to some economics, our human mind is rational, and therefore we should also be able to make rational decisions. This built the foundation for a theory called game theory, which applies mathematical logic to otherwise tricky decision-making situations. Game theory poses different dilemmas where people should be able to choose rationally. However, people still don't act quite as what is expected out of them, and we tend to cooperate more than the theory suggests that we should. Why is this the case, and does this mean that our minds consequently keep making irrational mistakes? This is what we will explore in the third chapter of the book. There are two common games within game theory, and they're called the prisoner's dilemma and the ultimatum game. In the prisoner's dilemma, you and your partner in crime are caught and put into separate cells. The dilemma faces two scenarios. Either you remain silent and cooperate with your partner, or you confess and thereby defecting your partner. The best outcome would of course be if you both kept quiet. In that case, you would at most risk a short prison sentence. The worst outcome is if you both confess, which will get you both a longer sentence. But the decision also poses a dilemma. If you remain silent while your partner confesses, things will turn out really badly for you. According to the theory, the most rational thing to do would be defect because it gives you a better payoff regardless of what your partner decides to do. But generally, people tend to be more cooperative. In the ultimatum game, you're given $100 and you're told that you have to offer some of it to another person. You can choose exactly how much yourself, but the other person needs to accept it in order for it to go through. If the other person says no to the offer, neither of you will receive any money. The rational solution to this problem would be to offer as little as possible. Because if they also act rationally, it would still be better to get a small amount than no amount at all. However, people don't tend to react this way, partly because the person offering usually offers quite generously, but also because the receiver tends to say that they would rather take nothing than a shameful offer. These responses are often described as mistakes or human fallacies, but is that really the case? One of evolution's most basic principles is that of inclusive fitness. Evolution favors behaviors that help the organism to pass on its genes, which leads natural selection to favor cooperation between organisms who share common genes. This principle also applies to cooperating more with those who have the most shared genes with us. Looking at the situation of running into, for example, a burning house to save another, the principle suggests that it would be worth it if you could save, for example, two siblings because they each share about half of your genetic load. When putting twins into the prisoner's dilemma, we can also see that they are generally more cooperative with each other, and they had a really hard time defecting, even when they were instructed to be more selfish. The studies also showed significant differences between identical and fraternal twins, where identical twins were 27% more likely to cooperate, which also confirms the previous mentioned principle. The book describes the situation of the two Disney brothers who often fought but yet managed to run a successful company and stick together throughout the years. Looking at the prisoner's dilemma, it has been found that the dilemma often disappears when two siblings are the ones playing it. Since they share about half of their genes, it would be more rational to cooperate when playing with a sibling compared to playing against a stranger. When playing against a stranger, and there is a conflict of interest, the most rational solution would be to defect and act in pure self-interest. This connects back to the principle of inclusive fitness, showing that it is more beneficial to cooperate with those who share common genes, since it would also benefit you more, even if you would be the losing part. The chapter brings up a theory by Alan Fiske that says that humans have different ways of interpreting exchanges between different types of people. Throughout his studies, he found that the way people exchange things varied depending on whom they were dealing with. He has identified several systems which are involved in decision-making. One of these are called communal sharing, which is used between close relatives. This system sets in place that you give of the resources that you have, you take what you need, and you also don't keep track of all contributions made. Another model from Fiske is equality matching, which describes exchanges between peers or friends. Between friends, we often feel like we should share things equally, and we don't require strict calculations of expenses. This differs greatly from principles of rational economics where you exchange services in an open market. Between friends, people have an enhanced sense of that things should be fair and that we can, for example, take turns paying for food or cooking for the group. Between friends, it's not uncommon to give another person an asset of yours without asking for money or trade in exchange.
Since leadership brings not only boosted benefits but also elevated expectations, there are actually few people who want to be a leader. According to the anthropologist Alan Fiske, our status subself follows the model of authority ranking, by which people receive different benefits and pay different costs depending on their position in a status hierarchy. Without a willing leader, the herd members will disperse randomly and lose the benefits of being in a group. In exchange of loyalty, obedience, and privileges, leaders must provide resources, protection, and direction. If not, they might be eliminated by their own followers. Market economics are deeply rational in intergroup negotiations and in the interaction with total strangers, when the top priority is protecting yourself and your fellows, providing a system to regulate the careful accounting of costs and benefits. The majority of theorists and researchers have presumed that some variant of market pricing drives all human decisions. However, since we rarely deal with total strangers, this principle actually applies to only a fraction of human decisions. In fact, even with total strangers, we usually want those people to like and respect us. A tendency to treat others in a coldly calculating manner is an indicator of sociopathy. Unless you are dealing with potentially hostile strangers you will never see or hear from again, the cold, rational, self-interested market economics do bad for business. Frederick Winslow Taylor, the ultimate capitalist philosopher, developed the theory of scientific management, which claims that if the employer pays just as low as he can, the workman will do just as little work as he can. Financial incentives motivate workers to boost production rates, increasing profitability. The key difference between home and Wall Street economics is trust. Since there is less incentive to defect in the kinship game than in the Wall Street game, the key is to switch people from one model to the other, even if they aren't your relatives. Lisa DeBruyn, an evolutionary psychologist, developed the trust game, a study by which people converted, in practice, were strangers into kins. She morphed the photo of two persons, making them look potential family members. This activated the kin care subself. All of a sudden, people trust the other person. According to the fact that people will trust and cooperate more with others if they feel like they are part of a family, some great corporations such as Southwest Airlines succeeded by, in essence, activating the kin care subself at work, inspiring unrelated people to treat each other like family. In fact, Eisner brought to Disney a hard-nosed Wall Street emphasis on the bottom line, resulting in a harsher atmosphere, so he was treated like a foreign stranger and thrown out when started losing money. In conclusion, each of ourselves negotiates according to a different rulebook. We have a different set of biases depending on whom we are playing with, often leading to put self-interest aside. Our different subselves are flexible and can be turned on and off to fit our current social context.
In the year 2002, Zambia experienced food crisis. The country was at the edge of starvation. President declared a national food emergency. Within weeks, the United States sent enough food to sustain until next harvest. President rejected the aid. He had supported the food boycott from the government and much of the population. Observers speculated that maybe the food was low in quality, but it was not. It was exactly the same food Americans consumed every day. The reason of rejecting the food were two words printed on a label, genetically modified. For Zambians, the crops were not food but poison. They would rather starve than eat it. The decision of rejecting the food was a mistake. However, it comes from a deeply intelligent brain. It is designed to avoid much more serious mistakes. Although biases often leads to mistakes, they helped our ancestors solve evolutionary problems. Our perception of reality is influenced by phenomena such as false consensus bias, the tendency to overestimate the degree to which others agree with us, overconfidence bias, the tendency to believe that we are better than average, Our perception of reality is so skewed by our brains that we seem to be out of touch with the true nature of reality. This, however, allows us to survive in an incredible range of environments. It does not mean that our brains is free of biases or that people do not make silly choices. However, it helps us to reconsider what it means for judgments and decisions to be considered smart. The question is it always smart to be accurate? In some cases, evolution might even disfavor truth and accuracy. Authors do not say that a delusional person is going to be evolutionarily successful. For most problems, it's better to be accurate than inaccurate. However, our brain is not designed to strive for accuracy and truth 100% of the time. For example, when our eyes see the approaching object, our brain tells us that this object will hit us sooner than it actually will. This gives us more time for reaction and works like an advanced warning system, which shows that being accurate is not always smart. Our brain is designed to make specific kinds of errors and not others. It tends to be oversensitive rather than make mistakes that could cost us much more, for example, our lives. The oversensitivity helps us to avoid the situation in which we could lose our resources, because this is much costlier error. The human aversion toward risk may lead into errors, but it is a calculated bias. It protects us from making much bigger mistakes. Different subselves have different evolutionary goals, which influence our decision and judgment-making process.
As humans, we have subconscious defense system because our body evolved to be safe rather than sorry. Our immune system works in the same way. It can be triggered by a number of things that could be signal dangerous pathogens in the vicinity. Our disease avoidance subself reacts subsequently to the environment. Although the behavioral and physical immune system are usually perceived as two separate things, they work closely together. Studies conducted among healthy participants shown increased level of white blood cells in those to whom had been shown pictures of sick people with rashes and pox, as well as images of people coughing and sneezing. That proves that the immune system was deeply rational about the types of images that set off the biological response. Behavioral immune system produces an array of responses designed to help prevent infections. For instance, the disease-avoiding subself leads people to be more conscious of foreigners from exotic places. When it might seem to be an exaggerated behavior, it is a deeply rational response to avoid contact with anything that may require psychologically costly mobilization of our real immune system. From the evolutionary point of view, having a good defense against danger or disease is equally important as having a good offense, which is making friends, gaining status, and reproducing. Natural selection has rigged man's mate acquisition subself to overestimate the extent which humans are interested in them. Evolutionary success in reproducing is a numbers game. The more you are willing to ask, the more mates you are likely to get. Women, on the other hand, do not show sexual over-perception bias. They are much more skeptical when it comes to men. Ovulation is a hormone trigger for women's mate acquisition subself. Studies have shown that during the time of ovulation, women subconsciously became more attracted to so-called bad boys. Handsome masculine appearance can be a signal that a man carries genes that will make for healthier, stronger, and sexier offspring. However, such men often has a problem with commitment, which makes them definitely not perfect relationship partners. Natural selection engineered women's minds to extract high-quality males' genes. That ovulatory delusion may be the extra push that some women need to participate in sexual encounters with men high in genetic quality. Political scientist Dominic Johnson finds evidence that confidence, especially overconfidence, can be an evolutionary adaptive bias. Confidence is an essential ingredient of success in job performance, sports, and business. It serves to increase ambition, resolve, and persistence. Confident people remain more optimistic in uncertain situations. Foolish and even delusional perspective can be smart from an evolutionary point of view. Our brains are designed to solve evolutionary challenges. Each of our subselves is biased to make occasional errors, but the same biases often lead us to avoid big evolutionary mistakes, such as failing to reproduce.